Welcome! My name is Colleen Tauke and I'm the sewing specialist here at Pons & Porter. In this Quilting Quickly tutorial, I'm going to show you the parts that go into the quilt called Chirp. If you'd like to purchase this pattern, please visit our website. Okay, we're going to be using a wonderful collection of yellows and gray pre-cut 2.5-inch strips. And we're going to be bringing in a tone-on-tone white fabric to put with it. And you can see that the quilt is made up of a lot of strip sets, little squares, and then these wonderful stars that play through the quilt. So what you're going to be starting with is using those 2.5-inch strips, and you're going to be creating strip sets of 3. And you're going to put together a variety of those, and then you're going to be layering those up and cutting down through, and you're going to cut the 2.5-inch wide segments. Follow the pattern for the number required, because you're going to be creating the various lengths that fill in the spaces on each side of the star across the quilt. So once you have your strip sets made and your segments cut, you have a majority of your quilt top done. But let's get into the stars, because that's the part that takes a little bit more to create. So these are paper foundation pieced stars, and there are 3 fabrics used in each one of them. And I've left the paper on the back so that you can see that yes, they are actually stitched to paper. The paper is removed before the quilt is finally assembled. And I want to walk you through the parts of making those stars. So what you're going to be doing is taking the pattern from that we have published, and you're going to make copies of that. You want to make an exact copy. You don't want it to resize. And then you're going to be cutting these segments apart. There are 4 of them that make up the star. And as you cut them apart, leave a little bit of space around each of those portions so that you aren't cutting on that heavy line at this point. Just kind of bubble cut them out. And then we're going to be creating our sections of the star. What I'm going to have you do is come in and make creases along each of the dotted lines that separate the different portions of the star, the center and the star points, or from the background. So what we do is kind of score along that, kind of give it a weakened spot, and those are going to be our seam lines in the end. This also helps the paper come out more easily when we get to the very final step. But there's the first portion we want to create. Now, they are color-coded, and there are instructions on where the different fabrics fall, but we're going to be using 3 fabrics for our stars. This is light print's going to be the center. This gray print is going to be the star points, and then we have background fabric that'll be used in some of those pieces also. This portion happens to be the centerpiece of the star right here, and it has 2 gray and 1 light. So we're going to create that portion of the star. Now, I kind of like to start in the center, but you can start at one end either way when you're doing paper foundation piecing, if this is something new to you. You're going to be building your piece on the back side of the paper. If we were to put the fabric on this side, we wouldn't be able to see any of the stitching lines or directions. So keep in mind you're going to be putting it right side down, and I'm going to align, as long as your fabric falls underneath the shape that we need, I'm going to align this so that, well, I'll start on this side. We're attaching 1 to number 2. I'm going to align this so there's about a 1/4-inch seam worth of fabric left behind there, and that fabric does fall behind piece number 2 there. Now I need a piece of the gray that's going to go under this portion. It's going to be a point of the star. And as I pick this up, I want to put them right sides together, this, so that later when I open it up, it will cover the paper underneath. But, which is like this. Show you really quickly before I stitch it. If it's right sides together and I'm seaming along here, there's always kind of a double check when you're doing paper foundation piecing to make sure that it covers. And that will cover enough of the point to be positioned correctly. So we're going to take this to the sewing machine. Paper side up, because we're going to be using the dotted lines that we made folds along as our seam our actual seams for where to stitch. So we're going to come in and stitch along this portion. Our first piece is attached. So we can open this up and open it all the way to the stitching, and it covers. So we have that portion covered. Now we want to come over and do the other side. So we're going to fold this back, and you'll see that there's extra fabric here. It's always better to have enough fabric than to not have enough. So we can always trim away. We can't put it back on. So I'm going to come in with the scissors. You can use a rotary cutter too, but trim away fabric and leave about 1/4 inch worth of fabric there. Now we're going to, well, that's too large of a piece. I need a smaller one. Then we're going to attach the gray here. And if I fold that, pretending that's a seam, just kind of double check myself, that will cover there also. So I'm going to pick this up, right sides together, you can see there, extend our paper, and we're going to stitch again on the dotted line. The first few times that you do to paper piecing, it's a little bit to get used to. You have to think a little differently. We're used to seeing a result not working on kind of from the back side of the quilt where the paper's at, but it takes a little bit, but it's fun to create because you can create angles and things that would be impossible to cut otherwise. Open that seam allowance all the way, and it covers there. Now, if for some reason your seam allowance has gotten wide or anything, you can come back and you can actually fold that away, and you can trim that seam allowance down at any point if you need to reduce the bulk. But at this point, we have the entire thing covered. Make sure we open all the way to the seam allowances, or to the seams, and then we're going to need to trim this down. The trimming portion now is when we're going to be actually cutting on the heavy line that is produced here. And I'll make sure that I reinforce to you that you cut on the solid heavy line, not the broken line, because I have actually done that before in class. Got ahead of myself, was trimming it down, and then realized I had thrown the entire seam allowance in the wastebasket. So make sure you're on the heavy line of these. Trim them down, and then we have the center portion of our star created. Now, each of the sections works in the same way. Each of these sections has approximately 3 pieces to them, so you're going to be covering them with fabric. See, there's a portion of it done. And then you will have all of the pieces that you need to create your star. And it does look a little silly yet at this point because they're not sewn together. You would need to join pieces here. And it will tell you the order to assemble these. You will join and stitch along the dotted line there, open out. Then you've created a straight line here, so you can add the next piece and the last piece. And if you want to, make sure that you kind of, in foundation paper piecing, sometimes we can align intersections, sometimes they get a little skewed. You can drop a pin through and try to somewhat center the points onto your star. But those you'll need 7 of those paper piece stars to create the quilt you see behind me, the quilt called Chirp. There are also a few other pieces. There's a couple of light colored fabrics that go on each side of those stars so that the white stars kind of float between your strip piecing. If you'd like to see more of our video tutorials, please visit our website. Thanks for joining me today.